want some water? You good? Gotcha.
I know it's not exactly
Good morning, everybody.
prettiest thing in the world.
For comment, I'm the 2025 Chair of the Chamber of Commerce. On behalf of the entire Chamber and Board of Directors, I want to welcome you to our February 8th issues on economic development. Especially want to thank our program sponsor, Hurricane Profit. Please give them a round of applause. This time, I would like to introduce Mike Brown, Hurricane Profit. Mike is here in Blacksburg and serves as Director of Land Development at Hurricane Profit. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. I hope you all are enjoying your breakfast. I want to extend a sincere thank you to Steve and to the Chamber for inviting us to sponsor this event. As a full-service civil engineering firm that is right here in our community, this topic resonates deeply with us at Byrd Provo. We are not just a company operating in the New River Valley, we are committed to economic development, focusing on community engagement through meaningful collaborations and partnerships. You'll find us actively involved on various boards and committees alongside groups like the Montgomery County Chamber of Commerce, Onward NRV, and the Blacksburg Partnership. Our engineers are proud members of the Virginia Economic Development Authority Association and regularly participate in events and initiatives led by the Virginia Economic Development Partnership. Moreover, our CEO serves on the Go Virginia Region 2 Council. This is not simply where we work, it's where we live, and we care about the growth and the well-being of our community. From a project perspective, we have had the privilege of working with numerous localities. Simpler than I thought. There you go. So from a project perspective, we've had the privilege of working with numerous localities throughout the New River Valley, including Montgomery County, the towns of Blacksburg and Christiansburg, as well as Floyd and Pulaski. I'd like to highlight some projects that we believe foster sustainable growth and attract new businesses and ultimately enhance the quality of life for our residents. Phases 1 and 2 of the Falling Branch Corporate Park, right off exit 118 in Christiansburg with the Montgomery County Economic Development Authority. Multiple sites in the Blacksburg Industrial Park, including Fork Robotics, the Huckleberry Park in Christiansburg, BCTI Smart Road Rural Road Expansion Project, the Floyd Growth Center in the Floyd Regional Commerce Center, as well as the Red Sun Farms in the New River Valley Commerce Park in Pulaski. Thank you once again for having us be a part of this event. We look forward to continuing to support our region and tackle the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead together. And now I'd like to welcome today's moderator, John Provo. John is the Executive Director for Virginia Tech's Center for Economic and Community Engagement. He provides leadership at the university in the design and implementation of the Economic Engagement Mission. A academic, he has almost 25 years of experience in higher education and government. He builds relationships between businesses, communities, and the university, and leads a team that delivers applied research projects that create economic opportunities. Please join me in welcoming John.
Oh, yeah. There we go. Thanks, neighbor. Hey, it is so cool to be here with such a crowd. I was telling Steve, I am no kind of morning person, but I will, even if it wasn't Chamber of Commerce weather today, I will get up in the morning for this breakfast. I am privileged to chat with you and an all-star panel today. I think these folks almost don't need an introduction, but I will go real quickly through that. From my left, for those of you who don't actually know all these folks, Brian Hamilton. Brian's Director of Economic Development for Montgomery County, and has been here, man, you've been here as long as me, which we're long in the great tooth here. Katie Boswell is Executive Director of the Onward NRV. I almost said River Valley Economic Development Alliance. That's a weird callback. Yeah. We're talking about the olden days. But Katie is a linchpin in so much of what we're doing in this region. And then another stalwart of the long-running saga of economic development in River Valley is Kevin Byrd, with Executive Director of the River Valley Regional Commission. And I think you guys will unpack a little bit of your specific work in your answers to the questions that I think we're going to talk about. And you might be still wrestling with us. You're getting it away from me. I don't get it. Battery change. All right, battery change. All right, listen, I know you want to record it. So I'm going to talk really slow for a second and lead up to my first question. How's that? All right, super duper. Well, listen, I think some folks may have seen the news lately. The River Valley was recently cited as the second fastest growing region in the state. This didn't just happen all of a sudden. It's actually part of a phenomenon where smaller metro areas like the River Valley have been leading Virginia in job growth out of COVID. So question to the panel, why did this happen? What do you attribute this to? And I'll throw it open, and if nobody volunteers to go first, I'll start picking on people.
Good morning. So Montgomery County was second, Charlottesville was first in the job growth. Of course, both are research universities. I think the research universities, and we have Radford, of course, and the River, really add to our economy. Last year, we had $556 million in research from Virginia Tech. The goal was $600 million. So as they continue to do research in computers, engineering, I believe that helps our local economy and also helps spin-offs. And Torque Robotics, which was up there, was one of our spin-offs.
That's a great point, Brian, and I think that one of the other benefits of our region as well is that we have a diverse set of industry partners beyond just the universities. So we have large businesses in manufacturing, tech and IT, and many other industries. So that kind of balances out in the grand scheme of things, right? If there's a higher ed slump for a little bit, the industries might be doing well and vice versa. So I think that helps insulate our economy against those cultural shocks when they go in several different ways over the course of the long term.
See if this one's working. All right, it is. Good morning, everybody. So as Katie mentioned, diverse economy. You think about rural regions, how many are fortunate to have large universities in them, a robust community college system, advanced manufacturing, healthcare, technology. We have a really nice, diverse portfolio of companies. Another thing that contributes to that growth is, I think, the commodities that they're working in. We have high wage jobs that are high skill, and that really helps growth expansion. If we're doing low wage and low skill, those are the economies across our country. Look at furniture and textiles. You know, when those left, it took so long to get those communities to find new futures. We're seeing that happen, but it's taken decades for that. And we just really weathered a lot of different economic changes. I mean, I think we're going to continue to be in a high fluidity state for quite a while. But I think that this is the best model of economic growth. And this is what Katie and Brian spend so much of their time on, is growing our own. And Brian can speak to that retention factor, and Katie, the recruitment side. But I think a lot of focus on our high wage, high skill is important. And that takes a whole ecosystem to pull that off of K through 12, community college, higher ed, feeding into our industry.
So ecosystem is going to be the word of the day, I think. And I like to just to recap real quick here. I'm not doing this lightning round style, but I think these are all going to stack as some important points we're going to want to follow up on. Ecosystem, if any biologists in the room, right? You know, a healthy one has a lot of different kind of things growing in it. And we talk about that in economic development for sure. As Brian pointed out, a big asset in Montgomery County is higher ed, and that gives us a great floor to build from, whatever the level, as Katie pointed out, the floor may be at any given year, we've got something to work from. So if you're taking notes, I'm not saying there's going to be a quiz later, but I think those are some great points to start off your takeaways today. So here's the flip side of this. We're leading in job growth, but population change is like an interesting conundrum. We pay a lot of attention to this Zoom era that we talk about sometimes. The population trends have seen Northern Virginia, Hampton Roads kind of taking a hit, right? They're generally on the decline, and some, not all, rural areas or small metro areas are seeing growth. Montgomery County, there's been kind of a modest net growth, while the rest of the newer valleys kind of, maybe a modest decline. And when you break it out, the data kind of shows us, the in-migration is happening, right? We're having people move here, good news, because a lot of you are in business related to housing and other things, and we need you to be successful at that. We're not netting out what they call natural growth, right? Births minus death is not playing out well for us in that regard. So how do trends like this impact the work that each of you do? And again, maybe this is a good time too to just, explain a little bit about, what you do so folks understand that too, right?
I'll go first this time. So a large portion of what Onward does, and we continue to bring this to the forefront, is talent attraction and retention to support the regional growth that we're seeing. And that has been a focus of ours for at least 7 or 8 years now. But what our investors really told us and our stakeholders is that we need to bring that more to the forefront. And I think that ties in so closely to what you're talking about, John, is we have to bring more people here. We obviously have a very focused group of students that are here. So how do we get them to stay here after they graduate, since we have these great higher ed institutions in the region? And so that's been a big focus of ours. And we've grown and expanded that, added staff to support that. And some things that we specifically do at Onward to support that, the NRV Experience Program, which for those of you who don't know, it's in our 6th summer coming up. It's a program to support your existing internships for employers with professional development and extracurricular activities. And the point of that is to show students that are here over the summer what we have to offer beyond that Virginia Tech bubble or that Radford University bubble or even your community college bubble, to get them to say, hey, this is pretty cool, let's live here long term. So those are some efforts that we've been doing and have had some pretty good success with that. We've had 21 interns over the past 6 years stay in the region after they've graduated, after about 50 of them that have responded to our outreach. So we'd love to get more responses from folks, but I think that just shows that those extra efforts that the employers are doing, but then also our organization are doing, are really targeted toward bringing folks to.
If folks want to talk about talent some more, is there a great opportunity for them to do that on March 13th?
Good plug there, John. We did not plan this, by the way. But we are having, with Go Virginia Region 2 as an extended region with partners in Roanoke, as well as partners in the New River Valley, at Radford University in their beautiful new Artist Center building. It's called the Future of Talent Summit, and it's going to be a really great and engaging program. In addition to some wonderful keynote speakers from the state level, we'll have employer panel speaking to local employers, as well as some strategic doing sessions to really brainstorm what does the future of talent look like in our region in the long term. So, good plug, John.
Great.
John mentioned exactly what we do, and maybe that's where we should have started off. We are Montgomery County, of course. Onward serves Montgomery County, Pulaski County, Floyd, Radford, and who am I missing?
Giles.
Giles, thank you. So at Montgomery County, we really focus on existing industry. 70% of what we do is existing industry, and that's where we see our growth. You have existing industry in Montgomery County. We work with biotechnology. We had the United Therapeutics expansion. That was kept pretty quiet, but it was a very big expansion for us. Again, companies like Torque Robotics. But going back to COVID, we lost an entire cluster of software and IT. So we had people getting work in Northern Virginia, headquarters in Ruston, bringing it back here to do the work cheaper. That is gone. You have buildings over at the Corporate Research Center that were just built, and then COVID happened, and they're not staffed. Torque has 300 people reporting into Blacksburg, maybe 30 to 40 people come in a week. So that has really hurt some of our efforts, and we've had to kind of shift our focus away from attraction of those industries, attraction to, making sure that other industries can grow as well.
So the Near Valley Regional Commission, the work that we do in economic development is on the planning side. And we have what's called a regional economic strategy. I encourage you to go to our website, pull it up on your phone now. It's nrvrc.org. The tab economy is going to take you over to what's called the regional economic strategy. We have a consumer version that's really just 4 pages of highlights of data, trends, and our top 10 projects in the region. That is facilitated by Leo Pretty. Leo, where are you? I saw him earlier. There you go. Stand up. There's Leo in the back. So Leo is our economic development planning specialist, and Leo worked for the chamber, so many of you all might recognize him from his time at the chamber. And he's also the small business development advisor for the Near Valley Small Business Development Center. So he has a lot of great resources in our role in planning. One of the things that Leo does is facilitate what we call our think tank for the region. We pull together folks in the public, private sector, nonprofits, and have a quarterly discussion about trends that they're observing on the ground, coupled with data that Leo bringing to the table, and saying, what are our trends we're experiencing in the Near Valley? What are state and national trends? It helps us inform wise strategies and top projects for the region. We have a laundry list of projects as a part of that. There's a couple hundred that our local governments are putting forward that when they're identified in this document, it helps them use that as leverage to go apply for funds for implementation. So our role is really on the planning side. That helps inform a lot of the other activities that take place. So thinking about population change, that's kind of where your question came from. And I look back at my own personal experience. Was son of a baby boomer, and the baby boomers were folks that lived to work. And then I think we observed a lot of that growing up, and I think now, and being a Gen Xer, you see it in millennials, is we work to live. It's just the inverse of that. When I finished graduate school at Virginia Tech, I said, the mountains are calling, I must go. I'm going to Asheville. I grew up in North Carolina, went to Appalachian State, and want to be back in the mountains of North Carolina. So I went down there without much of a job, had a part-time gig working for the town of Maggie Valley, which was their first town planner, and it just freaked my mom out. She said, you're going without a job, and you're not doing it. I'm like, I'll just make it work out somehow. And it worked out for about 1.5 years. And what I experienced in Asheville, and other people that have been there might appreciate this, is it's an economy that is really healthcare and service sector. And had an opportunity to come back to the Near Valley, and I thought, wow, the quality of life in this area was top-notch. Outdoor recreation access is better than it is in Asheville because you didn't have competition for the resources here like you did there, and that was really important to me. And very diverse economy. And recognizing that, it just made it was a no-brainer. So I think that's going to continue to serve us well in the long run. And the key now is economic development used to be if you had a site ready, you could have industry come. And then it got, you have to have utilities there as well. And then now it's all about housing. And to be able to compete for talent, you have to have housing. And we went through the regional plus local housing study several years ago now, and you often hear people bemoan the planning process. And I think what we've observed over a long period of time now, doing so many different regional local planning processes, is the process is what's so important. It's not the document at the end of the day necessarily that's the most important outcome. It's the education that the group gets that says, okay, this is why we need to do these things. And it helps empower people through that process. I can look around the room and see so many different people that are involved in housing that are doing things now because we had this collective effort, and we have joint investment in local government through the Regional Housing Trust Fund. We had developers that are doing a lot of new housing starts. You look back at our housing starts in the region, the biggest numbers were in the 70s and 80s, last time Virginia Tech had a major growth through the campus. And we're starting to see that again now. And you see this call in Pulaski County for 40 by 30. If you haven't heard what that is, that's growing their population to 40,000 by the year 2030. Their population is around 35,000 in a slow decline. But they're making this their biggest pitch, and anything that they're investing in within their county coffers, they're going back to, does this help increase our population? Because they realize you have to have population growth to retain your companies and to be able to expand those companies. And it's all cyclical, but housing's driving it all right now. The last thing I would say is that our population stuff, it's fluid, and we're number 2 right now in the state, but we have to remain aggressive. That's not always going to be the case. And I think that we need to continue to put resources into telling our story, and what Onward Near Valley is doing is helping to craft that external information and knowledge of this region. So it's super important for people to know what it is we have to offer.
Well, Kevin, you stole my segue actually about Pulaski County's, 40 by 30. I always get that backwards in the way the census type thing. So I mentioned at the top of this segment, it's the numbers are a little different in Montgomery County, not all that different. Context is different. Some of the neighboring counties have a different sort of set of issues around land use and things like that, a different dynamic on that. But I'm going to ask each of you, put your crystal ball on, I don't know if Montgomery County is ready for, 40 by 30s. No, what do they just do? We'll let them come up with their own slogans.
Yeah.
Right? But I think if you guys put your crystal ball on this, where should we be by 2030 in Montgomery County and the region on population? And what's going to get us?
So estimates have shown that 2030, 2040, we're going to be about 120,000 by 2040. We continue to grow at 1 to 2%, not what I would call, right now, because of our housing, and I guess I should jump to the comp plan. That's where I should start. Right now, Montgomery County and the planning department and the county itself is working on our comp plan, and it's called Montgomery Matters. You can look that up and Google it, and trying to figure out where is growth best in the county. Now, we have 2 cities, we have the 5 villages, and so where can we focus that growth? Now, right now in Price's Fork, there's a lot of growth, 600 to 800 houses being built, and our ability to channel the growth where utilities exist, where schools exist, is very important. In order for us to continue that growth, we're going to have to add more housing stock and more housing stock. Kevin mentioned the study that was performed. We were minus 15,000 in the region. Is that right? I think.
Yeah.
And so that's quite a few numbers of housing. And of course, housing ownership, home ownership versus renting is a whole different subject. But I think for us, I'll let Katie talk about making sure we keep people here. But for us, it's going to be attracting people, having the right places for them to grow, and making sure our housing stock continues to grow. And then, of course, childcare is a big issue that we have not talked about.
Thanks for opening that door, though.
Yes. So Brian's absolutely right. If we're going to keep our population growing, that keeps our businesses growing, that gives enough employees for you all in the room and all of our other businesses to be successful. We need places to live and places for them to send their kids while they're at work, right? And so housing and childcare have become really big focuses in economic development over the past few years, where that wasn't really part of the economic development puzzle in the past. That was just community development really as a piece. And so I think absolutely the county is doing a great job of identifying those locations for growth, but we need to continue the efforts regionally through efforts like the Housing Trust Fund to make sure that we have those affordable housing pieces. And then we also need to continue growing the childcare availability here. And of course, I'm a mom of 2 little ones, so I know that very well. But Virginia Tech and the Community Foundation of the New River Valley is really leading the charge in some of that work and some innovative conversations. And I believe that the Community Foundation has also received funding from the town of Blacksburg to do some of that work. And so that also needs to be a drumbeat that we continue to sound to have our livability pieces there as well, and keep that talent here and keep those young families here, because that's really where we're going to see the growth. I think something we also need to be really conscious of, not only in Montgomery County, but in the region as a whole, is our availability of industrial sites. So much of our growth is coming from our existing businesses, but when our existing businesses want to grow and they have nowhere to go, they're going to leave. They're going to have to leave. It's not that they want to, but they aren't going to have another option. And so I think that Montgomery County has done a great job of developing Falling Branch Corporate Park, although we're running out of space in the corporate park. And we're looking at efforts regionally with the Regional Commission of how can we continue to develop sites around the New River Valley and grow those to make sure we're ready to respond when businesses want to locate or grow here in the region.
Just a quick point here on places important. And Brian, I'm glad you mentioned the Montgomery County Comprehensive Plan. It is a really good planning document. The fact that you have the towns and the villages that really trying to focus that growth in those areas. Not all communities in the Commonwealth have that level of county planning. And when Onward New River Valley went through the rebranding of the organization from New River Valley Development Alliance to Onward, one of the brand discovery things that they came across, which is unique for the New River Valley, is intentional living. And that you have so many choices of places to live in the New River Valley that are distinct from each other. You think that experience is different from Floyd to Giles to Radford to Pulaski to Montgomery. And we have housing starts happening around the region in all those places now that we didn't have just a few years ago. But place is so important. And people are craving that. And that's why the population change, I think, is affecting us in a positive way.
All right, I'm looking at the county field. You guys hear a slogan in there for you somewhere? Okay, we'll check back. Let's pivot a little bit. We had a big trauma in our region. It seems like a long time ago for folks who weren't directly impacted. But the hurricane, the flooding, I was talking to my daughter was in Richmond, and I was commiserating when they had a 3-day water shutdown, and we had a weekend
10,
something like that. I mean, different circumstances, but first off, a couple questions on this. So, it's still out on the landscape in some places, and it's certainly feeling some voters' balance sheets kind of sort out from the impacts. Can you all talk a little bit from maybe both a community perspective, all types of businesses really have some impacts. What remains to be done? What work is unfinished for the region in this climbing back from the hurricane and its impacts?
So one thing I'd like to mention is our volunteer fire and rescue did a great job. We supplement that as needed, but they did a great job in coming out and making sure that the people were safe. We didn't do a mandatory evacuation. We did you please leave. You need to leave, it's gonna flood evacuation, and in those areas that were around the New River. And so that is really where I'd like to start calling out. Just wanna mention that we had, after the flood, we had FEMA at the Montgomery County Government Center for 2 weeks, the Virginia Department of Emergency Management, Small Business Administration. So they were all there for the people. So as far as the water shut off, I am not an expert in water, and it was all inconvenient, but Chris's word of the day is turbidity, which is how clear the water is, how much silt is in the water. And that was really the main issue, not necessarily the quality of the water, but we got some algae, we got some dirt, and that system had to be cleaned from top to bottom. And the responsibility that the government has to take on doing that is what's important, and they did what was correct. Thank you.
I know around the region, obviously outdoors is a big asset for us. And so I think some of the things that still need to be addressed, although they have been very well and very quickly addressed, is continued cleanup of our Claytor Lake and the river, New River assets, and especially to get them ready for the upcoming warm weather, to make sure that we can still take advantage of all of those tourists or just our locals that want to enjoy the outdoors. And so I know that has been a big focus and will continue to be a big focus in the next coming months. One of the things that I think was really important in the response is that the regional collaboration piece that we value so highly here in the New River Valley. And I'm specifically thinking of there's no wrong door. So if you need help as a business or as a person, you had FEMA involved, you had the chamber had a great response and really active involvement in getting that messaging out to folks. And so wherever you reached to someone that you needed help, they can put you in touch with the right person to help you. And I think that's a great asset of the way that we work together here in the New River Valley.
Yeah, Katie, I'm glad you mentioned that response. We have really strong relationships across the region post-pandemic. Our chief county administrator, our chief local government administrators, Angie Hill and her counterparts, get together once a month for conversations, just what's happening. And then the second time of the month is on Zoom for those who missed our lunch conversation. But we had all hopped on the phone really fast after the flooding to figure out just kind of who's experiencing what around the region. And when you mentioned response, I just remember the Corps of Cadets. You know, they went from the campus out to Giles County, and for the first time in I don't know how many decades, they didn't do their traditional fall march. They thought this was so important. They needed to go serve the community. It's just remarkable. But you know, when we went through this list with our local government administrators to find out what those impacts were, it was so helpful because you have FEMA and you have Virginia Department of Emergency Management, you have all these entities coming on the ground, and then at the end of the day, it's the governor's office that calls on a Friday morning and says, we need a list ASAP because we're getting ready to put in a federal request. I'm like, well, haven't we talked to all these others? Well, we have some information, but it's not necessarily complete. What do you have? I was just kind of shocked, but that's how these things happen. I mean, there's lots of people jumping in to help, but it's so important we're communicating across. And we'll have some funding packages coming out here soon. But just a quick recap, there's 100 homes that were lost as a part of that flooding event, mostly impacted in Pulaski County and Giles County. There were a couple in Montgomery County as well, total losses. And then a lot of recreation assets were impacted. Great, they're in the right place along the floodplain, so that's perfect. But those do cost money to repair, and a lot of our local government policies aren't replacing those. So they're trying to find other ways to make that happen. A lot of our impacts and threats were to water and wastewater systems. That's extremely important. Obviously, Montgomery County had the boil notice. Won't forget that anytime soon. But in Giles County, Rich Creek and Narrows both lost wastewater treatment for a while. Narrows was completely underwater, and their system continued to operate completely submerged. And then Rich Creek had 2 pumps for their system they were submerged, and they were not submersible pumps, so their system was down. So they had direct discharge for 24 to 48 hours, depending on how long it took them to get the pumps replaced and going again. And so they're operating again, but we're working with Harrisburg and Narrows on combining their wastewater treatment plant. It's a cost of efficiency, a scale of economy there, but it's also just trying to have better operations long run. And when we looked at the water withdrawal, so many people in the public were asking, why didn't Pulaski County, City of Bradford have their water situation like Montgomery County did? And they just pretty much got lucky, is what we've determined in our conversations with the administrators, is that Pulaski County saw some really funky looking water coming their way, and they happened to shut down their intake, and then they called their manufacturers who are heavy water users and said, please slow down your process for as long as you can. And they were able to avoid it, but also their system is not as large as the New River Valley Water Authority system, so they're able to pause and use their tanks, but then they were able to recharge after some of that bad water went by. And then if you look at the City of Bradford's intake, that's also on the New River, but it's close to the Little River, where those confluence below the dam. If you're driving down 81 and you look over towards the dam on a rainy day, you'll see the Little River has a lot more siltation coming through, turbidity. On a regular basis. And in this case, that helped City of Bradford because they had water coming in to dilute what was coming through the dam. But it's such a unique storm event. This really, most of the water didn't fall here. It fell in the headwaters and boom, and then came this direction. So it's very unique. You know, our organization prepares the Regional Hazard Mitigation Plan, and that document is similar to the economic strategies. We identify projects to work on that helps our communities become more resilient. And one of the things that the two things we're always looking at in the region is freezing temperatures and flooding. But this was so unique. But we're working now on, with the U.S. Economic Development Administration on an application for a disaster response coordinator role, really to shift from reactive to proactive on some of these conversations. One of those topics is how do we interconnect water systems? We've done studies on that a long time ago and might want to revisit some of that in emergency situations. Right now, the city of Bradford has a connection with Pulaski County that can serve the Commerce Park in Pulaski County. That was a major regional win. It kept Pulaski County from having to build a water treatment plant, and then allowed the city, who has a very high water withdrawal permit, to sell water to Pulaski County in the event that they needed it. But can we connect Bradford and the newer water authority system is a question to explore a little bit further. But definitely infrastructure is key. And this natural disasters, as we see in the news on a regular basis, they're not going to go away. We have to continue to be resilient. I think that the Newer Valley is fortunate that we haven't had many in the past. I think we will have people continue to look to move here to escape other climate situations. We have a lot of good air quality days compared to other areas out west that have regular fires. And to the fire point, we do have a lot of potential for fire, and thankfully the Forest Service has done well. The past couple of years, you might have noticed that they were doing controlled burns in Pandapis Pond area. That's extremely important because that affects Brush Mountain and it gets closer to our population center. So those controlled burns are really good. They've also done a lot of timber harvesting in Giles County on the Forest Service property, so they're being managed. We need to continue to advocate for federal investment in forest management. That's just going to keep us safer in the long run. But yeah, that's little thoughts on our hurricane situation is continued conversation on stability and resilience of our public infrastructure systems and investments in forest.
You kind of anticipated my follow-up question, which is, what did we learn and what should we be working on together? The interconnected regional water systems, that's a great big thing we can all talk about for a while. Certainly, I think there are other conversations maybe to have about, interruptions to business and how we, support them through some of these things. We did good, but we don't know the answer yet. Don't worry, I won't put you on the spot. But if there's anything else you guys want to say about, what we might do next time, whether it's a flood or a tornado or whatever, particularly to support businesses directly through these times, feel free. Anyway. Saw his eyebrows go. That's why I love Brian's eyebrows are, a barometer or something.
So, long-range planning. And we have a great emergency services department, and they are looking at, conditions, what is needed in fire and rescue, where do we build new stations. Now, interconnection of water, we just had a big prospect come through, and Montgomery County has roughly 2.5 million gallons a day of water. The city of Radford has 8 million gallons of water, and I think they're only using half of that per day. And so, could these systems with funding, probably state and federal funding, reach out to the other localities? Yes. And so I think, many years ago, or not that many, Montgomery County joined the Regional Water Authority. And that was important for us so that we can maintain, all of Virginia Tech, Montgomery County, we're in the two towns are all in the same system. As you get further away, that's not the case. And so for us, it's important to plan for the future, and that's where our planning in Montgomery matters and our emergency services. Those two things have to work together for future planning. Look at where we have the issues and look at where we can follow up.
So I did mention earlier, we're still dealing with a lot of debris. I don't know if you saw that news article a little while ago that said Friends of Southwest Virginia had $1 billion Appalachian Regional Commission grant to address outdoor recreation impacts. And there was a few of us that got together to talk about how to program those funds. And we immediately thought, well, this is going to go to the Creeper Trail and the impacts there in Washington County. But we quickly learned that there was $660 million that Congress appropriated for addressing the trestles that were destroyed, and that's all on Forest Service property. So that $1 million, then, okay, how do we program this? And what we came up with was debris removal strategies. So we have an RFP that's going to go out soon through Friends of Southwest Virginia to try and get a handle on the New River and I think it's the middle fork of the Holston River in Washington County area. But we know there's a lot that we can deal with as volunteers, but then there's a lot that's going to take special equipment. It's just large things, and probably need to get some little water barges with equipment to be able to get in and get this stuff out, because next flood, that's really going to impact bridges and culverts and really put us in a bad situation with people who have those low water bridges and whatnot. So that's something that we need to be paying attention to on a regular basis. But again, this was unique and this pushed so much down from other areas. Another thing that I've seen here, and we hear about in the news, is that the federal money takes a long time to get to the communities and really get to the people that were impacted directly. The Commonwealth having an investment in a natural disaster fund, I think, would be very wise. That's something that in further southwest, they had 2 flash floods, and it took them a long time to figure out how to get money to those communities. We did some evaluation in some of our corridors, like Big Stony Creek in Giles County, and figuring out if you had flash flooding in there, how many homes would be impacted, water and sewer. But then the money to get there. Public money is great, or state and federal money is great, but it just takes a long time. So is there anything we can be more nimble about at the state level in addressing disasters to be helpful?
Kevin, go ahead, Katie, sorry.
You go ahead.
Well, I was going to plug what you guys did with all your local government partners around COVID and the business response team, because I think some of these things come in water and I don't know, what do we got, water, fire, or something. I mean, it'll take whatever shape it does, and the ability of the localities to come together directly to identify and provide needed services for businesses, I think is another part of how this region works well together.
Yeah, that's part of our, I think, stability in the economy. And that first question you'd asked, John, about our economic growth, I think trends happen over a longer period of time. Was that we were one of the fastest regions to recover post-pandemic because we had the Public Health Task Force, and as an arm of that, we had the Business Continuity Team that Go Virginia helped fund, and John helped administer that. And we had a team in our organization that worked with the health district, and that team, Business Continuity Team, they were working with large employers. They're talking with Volvo every single day, and all the way down to mom and pop shops about how do we operate today in the current policy environment that we have on restrictions to the next day to the next. So our economy didn't slow down. If you look at DC, I mean, boy, that is so different. Here they are trying to call federal workers back because it has, there's a lot of issues with that and their economy has changed. But here we didn't stop working in this region. So I think our trend started post-pandemic and continues to go up because we have this sense of resilience of continuing to move forward. But yeah, that's extremely important, is those communications and working together.
I think also tied into that is the existing relationships that our local economic developers have with the businesses in our communities throughout the region. And so and Brian and his team do a great job of this, of having those existing relationships with the employers and knowing what they need, being able to go in every, a couple times a year, once a year, and say, what do you need when these disasters happen? And so then we have a sense of how to help, and they know who to get in touch with to provide that help or to connect them with who that is. And so I think that is a really key asset that our local economic developers provide to the region as a whole with those existing business relationships.
So I've got 2 more questions left, and we got to work a little fast because Steve's going to put the hook on us in a minute. So we've already talked a little bit about, I don't call it the elephant in the room or whatever, but the impact of federal funding. I think with what's gone on lately, there's been coverage in the media that I think folks have seen that reminds us that this is going into our hospitals, our educational institutions, and our private businesses, in some large ways and small. Brian alluded to the stabilizing aspect of being tagged, and $500 million of research, supports actually a lot of jobs. I mean, those are not people who just go back to. Some of them are teaching, but some of them are directly engaged in those funded activities, producing an outcome that, for whatever reason, has been identified as something that's supportable. So I guess the question is not about federal funding per se, but the question really is about something you all alluded to in response to the beginning question, I think, how do we sustain things, right? I mean, how do we talked a little bit about diversification. You know, there's a lot of organic growth that's driven the job growth numbers in our region. But what are we doing now to sustain growth, and what more can we do?
One of the ways from my perspective that we can do this is to continue to grow the networks of businesses here in the region so that we know what each other does and how we can support one another. And I'm specifically going to call out the Virginia's Additive Manufacturing and Advanced Materials Tech Hub that all of us have been involved in the effort, and John and Kevin are leading the way on this. But establishing existing networks with our manufacturers so that they know what each other does and that they can continue to say, hey, I need a supplier for this. Do you know that person? Or could you possibly be the supplier that I need? And so obviously we're never going to cut out those external sources of funding, but to be able to have some backups or some resiliency within our own region, I think continues to be invaluable.
Yeah, Katie, I'm glad you mentioned Tech Hubs, and Emma Carroll is here. Emma, can you stand up real quick? She's the Regional Innovation Officer and is the main staff lead on the Tech Hubs program. In John's office at Virginia Tech Center for Economic and Community Engagement, there's just been an awesome partnership between university, organization, and industry, building those relationships. It's so neat to see all these light bulbs go off between firms. But you know, something I've heard several times over the work of the past 10 years of the Deer Valley Passenger Rail Station project is being politically agnostic. That project has been supported by both R's and D's in the governor's office since this thing started. It started out under McDonnell. You know, we had McCullough in the Democratic side, and then Northam. And Northam administration made a $150 million investment, and now we have Youngkin's administration ponying up about $300 million more. So it's $444 million commitment right now in the state. So that's gone through multiple administrations, and any of our strategies need not to be focused on political pushes in the current day. It's this Tech Hub program that we're going through a planning process, and those strategies, if they're worthwhile, they'll be funded by whoever's in office. And they'll be funded at multiple levels of state and federal as well, and private sector investments. So that's the main thing, is just making sure that you aren't too attached on a political or economic strategy that is politically led.
Well, and the branding on that one aside, that one has also been supported by Go Virginia under the current administration, so.
Yes, Go Virginia has been, you know, that's a great state lever for us, and we really appreciate that.
I guess one thing on a local economic development, we do product development. Falling Branch Corporate Park has been mentioned. The Montgomery County Board of Supervisors has invested quite a bit of money to make sure we have land for existing industry and for new industry. The current issue is post-COVID, everybody knows, building costs have gone through the roof. You know, we are looking at one building for a very specialized industry that would have cost $70 a square foot, now costs $200 a square foot. So how do you build that and lease it to someone? That is, you know, almost for the business to expand, almost unfathomable. I mean, you're charging $20 for warehouse space, and that's on a 20-year lease. You just can't make the numbers work. But we need, kind of like how the housing's been built in Rice's Fork, we need large, you know, they can do it by scale. You have a number of buildings, you're building 500 or 800 houses, you can do it by scale. We need to make sure that we can add buildings, and not office buildings. We need to add 24-foot clear buildings that, you know, 10,000 square feet minimum, that you can actually do some distribution, some light manufacturing. And I think as you look at our zoning, we need to consider where can those buildings be. Because if you go in and look at Falling Branch, unless you actually know the company, you don't really know what they do. There's a sign out front. There is zero emissions and zero noise that generally comes out of our businesses. So where can we put those businesses? You know, and in the future, where can we grow our product? That's really going to be an issue for us as we grow, but having the sites and buildings is much more important, and Katie can tell you about
Yes, so Brian has hit the nail on the head. We need additional developed sites and buildings. When prospects come to us, they want to be operational as quickly as possible. And so projecting multi-year development processes once they get to us is just not feasible for us to be attractive to them. And so we need to do that work up front. But unfortunately, that means an investment, and our localities have really taken that on, and they've gotten support from organizations like Go Virginia, and so that's been wonderful. But that is something that we need to continue to grow in this region and get ready so that we can be ready to go as soon as a business shows interest in us.
Last question, 30 seconds or less answer, lightning round. For everybody here, what's one thing that happened in 2024 that we haven't already talked about that surprised you? And also, like, what's something you're going to predict for us for 2025 that we can ask you about next year?
Well, what was surprising for us is that our organization bought a new office building. We're excited about that. We bought the former Atlantic Union Bank building in Christiansburg, so we'll be moving. It's date TBD. We're working with Tim Colley and Steve Simonis to get our building ready for move, but we're going to construct some meeting space there, so it's going to be a little while. But that was just amazing to have all of our partners, all of our members commit to that service. We have 16 members of the Regional Commission, and they all stepped up and said this is important. So we're excited about a move. That was a surprise in 24 for us. But then 25, to look in the crystal ball, I'm excited about the Partnership for Progress and the work that Virginia Tech is doing with that. I think that's going to open the door for future proactive work between our communities and the university. I think we'll see some things next year for that.
Emily left, so I'll have to tell you.
Yeah, I hope it's being recorded.
Yes. One exciting, unexpected thing for Onward this year, we were lucky enough to receive the Community Service Organization of the Year award from the Montgomery County Chamber. That was a very exciting thing for us in December to be recognized for the work that we do here in the New River Valley. And for 2025 on the horizon for us, we're really excited. Most of our talent attraction and retention efforts have been in the college space and even for our alumni. And so we are excited to grow into our high schools. We're currently piloting a program for industry tours for manufacturers in Pulaski County this school year, and expanding into all 5 of our localities in the 25-26 school year. And so that, I think, is going to be a really impactful way to show our young students what great jobs are available here in the New River Valley.
So one thing that Montgomery County has taken on as a result of COVID is broadband. The broadband is kind of one of the words for 2025 that we're going to be working on. And I know it's gone slower than we would like. We're just finishing up our first project down in Elliston, Lafayette, Shawsville area right now, and moving into Reiner and other places as we speak. Our partner, Appalachian Power, is, of course, running all the middle mile fiber for us. And that wouldn't be possible if we had not done a, partnership with Appalachian Power through the Department of Housing and Community Development. I think one of the other items is redevelopment. We filled in a lot of the county, or it's being filled in with housing. Where can we find property that, like Marketplace, I think the town of Christiansburg did an excellent job with Marketplace. They stayed on top of it, and they found a developer that would rework Marketplace. And, 10 years ago, there was an empty Walmart and various other stores coming in and out, and the whole place was falling apart. Now you've got new investment, new restaurants, which makes, new academy sports, more investment, more tax revenue. And so I think as we look around the 2 towns in the county, what can we redevelop? And I think that's going to be very important in the future.
All right. Listen, we are so out of time. I want to thank the Chamber, and I want to thank all of you for giving all of us a chance to talk about what we would agree with today. And will you all join me in applauding these 3 folks for
Thank you all for coming. Also want to thank our sponsor, Hershey Profit, Warm Heart for our breakfast, and especially our panel who did just a great job today. We have gift mugs here from Logo Hub, located in Christiansburg. And we hope you'll join us for our next Exit Issues program, which is on housing and towns on March 27th. Thank you all.